Today's topic is Memories of Great Monks, and this is the third part in a three-part series on Venerable Ananda Maitreya, this renowned Buddhist monk who lived from 1896 to 1998. Let's see here. So this is the last presentation. And this monk I met in 1986 at the Vedanta Center in Santa Barbara. He came to participate in an in-depth Catholic, Buddhist, Hindu interfaith dialogue as part of the Vedanta Society of Southern California's celebration of Sri Ramakrishna's 150th birth anniversary. Sri Ramakrishna, who practiced the various religious traditions to their culmination, and who himself said, as many faiths, so many paths, as many people, so many paths. And he stayed as our guest for 3 days. Venerable Ananda Maitreya was a longtime friend of the Ramakrishna mission and one of the most highly respected teachers of the Theravada Buddhist tradition in the 20th century. At 91 years of age, which is the age that this picture shows, he passed away well beyond his 100th birthday. He was a master of both the Theravada and the Mahayana schools of Buddhism. Venerable Ananda Maitreya was one of the few monastic scholars who actively participated in the famous Sixth Council in Burma in 1953, translating and correcting translations of Buddhist texts. He was reputed as an authority of Buddhism. He presided for some time as the president of that council. Both a seer and a scholar, an incredible mix, Ananda Maitreya also helped to popularize Buddhism in the West by participating in the BBC's television series, The Long Search, in its 1977 episode, Footprint of the Buddha. And you can see this on your YouTube channel. So what makes Venerable Ananda Maitreya so special to us is that he was inspired at an early age by Swami Vivekananda. And he went on to read and add to his personal library over 1,000 pieces of literature relating to the Ramakrishna Vedanta and Hinduism traditions. Notably, he studied Vedanta and practiced Raja Yoga for some time. And I have previously pointed out in the first 2 talks some of the marked differences between Vedanta and Theravada Buddhist systems, such as number 1, Theravada concept of consciousness being only mental units rather than unified consciousness, which we in Vedanta hold to be the truth. And also the concept of no self rather than the Atman, which is one with Brahman, Satchidananda, pure existence, consciousness, and bliss. However, Venerable Ananda Maitreya's in-depth study of Vedanta revealed to him profound similarities and a breadth of vision in his own spiritual life. For example, he recognized the negation techniques within the Drigdrisha Viveka, very prominent Advaita Vedanta scripture, of neti neti, Atma, the little I of the ego associated with our mind-body complex as impermanent, matching similar techniques of the Vipassana meditation system. The only difference being that the Vipassana discipline does not arrive at, as Vedanta does, of the ultimate truth of the Atman, negating all as impermanent to arrive at only the Atman, which is pure existence, as the ultimate truth. The drive of its Buddhist negation technique reveals instead what is referred to as sunyata, emptiness. However, interestingly, when D.T. Suzuki, a renowned Zen monk, met my teacher, Swami Pravrajika, neither one spoke a common language, but they both acknowledged from the experiential standpoint that the sunyata, emptiness of nirvana, is the same as the purna, fullness of the Atman, which is one with Brahman. See, from their level of standpoint, they could understand that. However, the followers, it's kept separate so that their path is pure and undistracted. Of the Buddhist schools, Zen, Chan, and Mahayana Buddhism come the closest to Vedanta. But here it is also important to remember that Buddha refused to define the nature of reality. And in this connection, Sri Ramakrishna also stated what Theravada Buddhists would agree with. He said, "What Brahman is, none can define in words. Everything has been defiled, as it were, like the leavings of food. The Vedas, the Tantras, the Puranas, the systems of philosophy, of which there are 6, all are defiled. They have been studied and they have been uttered by human tongues. But there is one truth," Ramakrishna said, "one substance that has never been defiled, and that is Brahman. None has ever succeeded in describing Brahman in words." It's a matter of experience, in other words. It's not something that we can learn intellectually. So in today's talk, we'll focus on the Theravada perspective of reincarnation, Venerable Ananda Maitreya's perspective on what are necessary qualifications in spiritual life, what are the obstacles on the path, how to spiritualize our everyday life, and certain helpful mindfulness techniques we can use regardless of our spiritual tradition. According to Theravada, what is it that reincarnates? I asked Venerable Ananda Maitreya. He then shared, according to some, it is the small self, but from the ultimate point of view, we see that self, that small self, as a stream of mind units rising and falling every moment, leaving no gap, just like a cinema picture. A series of pictures is falling on a screen. That is the nature of what we call mind. He went on. It is the same stream of mind units that leaves this physical body at death and flows to another physical body, gross or fine, as the person's karmic force has determined at the last moment. He continued. In conventional language, we say that the mind or self passes from this body to another. But in accordance with the absolute truth, it is a stream of mind units, somewhat like the current of electricity. Every mind unit is a store of past impressions, which passes from one mind unit to every succeeding one. Now here, we find similarities and differences with the Vedanta view of reincarnation and the nature of the mind and consciousness. Like Buddhism, Vedanta accepts the theory of reincarnation. The Vedanta theory of reincarnation, however, posits that the subtle body, the mind of the individual, is what reincarnates, not mind units as consciousness, but the mind itself. That is where the samskaras, the tendencies of past actions, both mental and physical, in this and previous births, are stored. The force of the karma of these collective samskaras determines the future births of the individual jiva. So every action that we commit, that's stored in the subtle body, which is the mind. Every thought and every action. Since it is the subtle body, the mind of the individual that reincarnates, we naturally inquire, what is the Vedanta concept of mind then? In the spiritual heritage of India, by Swami Pravrajika, we find mind is said by the Hindu psychologists to be the veiling power of the pure consciousness. which is the higher self, and is associated with the higher self only as a necessary condition of world experience. In other words, it's like a mirror that is dirty. And so it's a very, very poor reflection of that pure consciousness. And that's why it's so important to purify the mind. That is one of the basic sadhanas of Vedanta. Unlike Theravada Buddhism, all systems, let me see here. Unlike Theravada Buddhism, all systems of Indian philosophy recognize a higher self separate from the mind and the body. And that higher self is pure, unconditional consciousness, which is separate from the mind-body complex, described in the Sankhya Vedanta as the 5 sheaves. And here you can see the 5 sheaves that encompass the self. In Vedanta, consciousness is what illumines the mind so it can think, feel, sense, remember, but it does not belong to it. It is that which illumines, but it does not belong to the mind. Then we come to the nuts and bolts of spiritual life. I asked, what are the qualities you consider most essential to spiritual life? Venerable Ananda Maitreya answered, simplicity, sense control, celibacy, purity, self-discrimination, dauntless energy, and self-confidence in one's practices, he shared. Now here it's important to note that Venerable Ananda Maitreya was talking with monastics. Celibacy for lay devotees would be fidelity to one's spouse. For lay devotees, Sri Ramakrishna did not prescribe the path of total renunciation. He wanted them to discharge their family duties because spiritual progress cannot be achieved by fleeing from responsibilities. Their renunciation was to be mental. But he encouraged a devoted married couple to live like brother and sister after the birth of 1 or 2 children, devoting their time to holy company, scriptural study, and contemplation. We may ask, how can staying the course of family duties bring spiritual progress? That's a valid question. Swami Vivekananda, in this connection, told the story in his book, Karma Yoga, of a young sadhu who went into a forest to practice yoga and meditation. After years of practice, one day he was sitting under a tree and leaves began to fall on his head. He looked up and saw a crow and a crane fighting in the tree, and he became angry. How dare they cause this inconvenience to me? And suddenly a flash of fire came out of his eyes and burnt the birds to ashes. Oh, what power, he thought. I can burn a crow and a crane by just a look. Soon after, he went into a town to beg his food and stood at a door. Mother, give me food. A voice came from inside the house. Wait a little, my son. The sadhu thought, what? How dare that woman make me wait? She doesn't know my power. A voice came again from behind the door. Don't think too much of yourself. I'm neither crow nor crane. Sadhu was astonished. When at last the woman opened the door, he fell at her feet. Mother, how did you know what I did? My boy, I do not know your yoga or esoteric practices, she said. I'm just a simple woman. I just made you wait because my husband is ill and I was nursing him. Throughout my life, she said, I've tried to do my duty, first to my parents and now to my husband. That is the only yoga I practice. But by doing my duty, I have become illumined. So I could read your thoughts and know your actions. But if you want to see a greater example of duty, she said, and learn higher truths, go to the marketplace and ask for the butcher. At first, the sadhu thought, what can I possibly learn from a butcher? But the old woman had opened his mind a little. So he went. And there he saw a fat butcher cutting meat and bargaining with shoppers. Oh my God, he gasped. Is this a man from whom I'm supposed to learn? Suddenly, the butcher looked up. Swami, he said, did that lady send you here? Take a seat and wait until I have finished my business. The sadhu hesitated, but took his seat. After the butcher had finished his work and collected payment from his customers, he said to the sadhu, come to my home. After they reached there, the butcher gave him a seat. Wait here, he said, and went into the house. He then bathed his elderly father and mother, fed them, and made them comfortable. At last, the butcher came outside to attend to the sadhu. Now, sir, you have come to see me. What can I do for you? The sadhu asked a few questions about God and the soul, and the butcher gave him a discourse which forms the Bhagavad-gita, a part of the Mahabharata, which contains the highest truths of Vedanta. The sadhu was astonished. With such knowledge, why are you a mere butcher doing such degrading work? My son, the butcher said, no duty is ugly. No duty is impure. My birth placed me in these circumstances, and as a boy, I learned the trade. But I'm unattached and try to do my duty well. I do my duty as a householder, he said, and try to do all I can to make my father and mother happy. I'm not a sadhu, nor do I live in the forest or practice your yoga. But all that you have seen and heard has come to me by simply and steadfastly performing my duty without attachment. Sometimes we monastics are asked by newcomers, why celibacy? Swami Brahmananda, the first president of the Ramakrishna order and direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, beautifully explained in The Eternal Companion, his biography. He said, in a chaste man, a special spiritual nerve called the Medha Nadi is developed. With its aid, his memory, his capacity for spiritual understanding, and his faith in God increase. He is able to experience spiritual truths which lie beyond the reach of the senses. That is the reason why religious teachers stress the ideal of chastity. I then asked Venerable Ananda Maitreya, what is the connection between virtues and enlightenment? Is the perfectly moral man an enlightened man? Or is enlightenment something more than perfection and virtues? He answered, virtue is absolutely necessary for spiritual development. According to Buddhism, virtue is the foundation of spiritual development. And such is the power of virtue that when Swami Brahmananda was asked what he thought about Mahatma Gandhi, he responded in English, through sheer force of ethical life, he is knocking at the highest door of spirituality. Venerable Ananda Maitreya continued, establishing oneself in virtue or morality, one should then develop concentration, mindfulness, and awareness. One should apply the practice of virtue to develop introspection. By developing introspection, one becomes enlightened. That is perfection from the Buddhist point of view. Where there is enlightenment, there are all virtues. The question then came, does one virtue bring everything else? See, we're having the benefit of this wonderful monk's holy company. He answered, one virtue brings all allied virtues because virtues are related to each other. As one virtue develops, all others follow. They're interconnected. Some people are full of faith. Some are full of wisdom. One must practice the virtue inherent within oneself. Then together with that, all the other virtues will come. But till they come into balance, one must not stop one's practice. When all the virtues come into balance, then there is enlightenment. How best can we invoke virtues? Swami Vijnananda, direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, simply explained, to invoke the master, meaning Sri Ramakrishna, means imbibing some of his qualities. When a man thinks intently on someone else, he comes to acquire some of the virtues of the latter. I then asked Venerable Ananda Maitreya, do virtues remove obstacles? He disclosed, if by virtues you mean good character, they are able to remove some obstacles. However, even a man of good character may have anger, greed, and pride within him at times. They are obstacles that stand in the way of one's spiritual development. So to remove such obstacles, one should develop concentration and introspection. I asked, what would be your advice to someone who lacks patience? He said, let him try to be aware of his own nature. This will produce patience. How can one develop humility? I asked. When one understands that one is not perfect, he answered, then one may have humility. Now, from another perspective, Swami Brahmananda said, humility is a great aid in the building of character. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, water accumulates on low ground. When the ground is high, it runs off. So now we come to obstacles in spiritual life. What are the obstacles that prevent the flame within from blazing? I asked. Venerable Ananda Maitreya shared unmindfulness, ignorance, and attachment to worldliness. He continued, samskaras seem so difficult to root out. How can we speed up that process? Be always mindful and full of awareness of where you proceed. Now the question naturally came, when distractions come in meditation, how can we concentrate the mind? And this is a typical question that we're often asked. His answer, one must be mindful when practicing meditation. Be attentive always. Otherwise, distractions crop up. But I asked, when the mind is already restless, how can we calm it? He answered, if one is mindful, one knows when one's mind is distracted and restless. Then one must, with effort, draw back the mind from external objects and fix it on the object of meditation. The meditation on one's breath, called anapanasati meditation, is a prominent method of keeping one's mind from becoming restless. In our tradition, we often use the mindfulness meditation of the ancient Sankhya Vedanta tradition to begin our meditation, calming the lake of the mind, witnessing the mind until it is brought under control, and then bringing in the mind into the heart. Now, in this connection in Yoga Vedanta, Vivekananda gave this powerful mindful meditation practice. We first watch the mind as a lake stretched before us, and we see how our thoughts come and go. We distance ourselves from the mind, and that brings a calmness and a centering to us. And by watching it, we don't react. We're like a scientist investigating the mind. And so we're just watching the mind, the thoughts of the mind, the emotions of the mind, the memories of the mind as a witness. And quiets of its own accord. Swami Brahmananda advised, the time best suited for contemplation is when the night passes into day, and when day passes into night. It is then that the Shushumna, the spiritual current, becomes active, and one breathes through both nostrils. As a general rule, he said, we breathe through only one nostril at a time, and this causes restlessness of the mind. Spiritual aspirants should observe when they are breathing through both nostrils. The Shushumna is active then. Those times are the most helpful for contemplation, and we should take advantage of them. I then asked Venerable Ananda Maitreya, do you approve of breathing exercises? He said, not as a physical exercise, but as a practice of meditation. This system has been given in detail in many discourses of the Buddha and in commentaries to those discourses. In brief, he said, you should not make an effort to breathe in and out, but just let the breath go in and out as usual. What you must do is to be mindful. As you watch it, the breath, you must fix your mind on the place where the breath touches the face, either the tip of the nose or the upper lip. The breath of a long-nosed person touches the tip of the nose, he said, while that of a short-nosed person touches his upper lip. Then you have to catch that spot mentally. In the beginning, you can only feel it hazily. He then added, a similar system is mentioned, I suppose, in the Yoga Vishishta. How can we develop self-mastery enough to get a grip over some skaras that are bubbling up within before they rise to the surface and become manifest, I asked. He said, first one has to develop wholesome qualities and then suppress their opposite unwholesome counterparts from bubbling up. Keeping precepts and developing concentration will accomplish this. Then one must develop insight to fully realize one's whole nature. When insight develops, samskaras will be attenuated gradually. When full realization dawns within oneself, ignorance, the root cause of all samskaras, is dispelled, as is darkness before sunlight. This is full enlightenment. And this particular picture was taken closer to his passing when he was over 100 years old. Now we come to spiritualizing our everyday life. How can we increase the quality of our work so that obstacles such as pride and dejection do not arise, I asked. He said the easiest way is to read the lives of the saints and to follow their example. Then if you keep in mind that the purpose of religious life is to unselfishly serve oneself as well as others, then this will not be a problem. The question then came. For some aspirants, the long-range goal is God realization, but the short-term goal is the expansion of consciousness. How can we expand our consciousness in everyday life? He said, expansion means cutting off the limitation. The limitation is belief in individuality, the limited I concept. If you cut that off, then there is expansion. How can we gain mastery over anger, especially at the moment of anger? When someone insults you, I asked, what mental process do you go through? He answered, the baby on the mother's lap may sometimes strike the mother or bite her hand, but the mother doesn't get angry. She knows that the baby has not grown enough to understand the mother's value. Similarly, an aspirant who has developed his spiritual side regards another's insults as due to childishness of ignorance. Therefore, he doesn't get angry, but pities the one who insults. He continued, according to Vedanta, there is no place where God is not. So God dwells within the insulting man, just as he dwells within him who is insulted. Thus God insults God. Thus, there is no reason to get angry. Venerable Ananda Maitreya added, according to Vedanta, the world is an illusion, so that insult is a part of the illusion. As for the Buddhist, he has many ways he can regard the insulter in order to control himself. A well-trained Buddhist sees no person that insults, nor one that is insulted. Why? Ultimately, a man is but a collection of ever-changing psychophysical states. Discriminate, he said. If there is an enemy who hurts you, take revenge. But first you must find out who is the real enemy. Suppose somebody beats you. Is his hand the enemy? No. The body doesn't work unless the mind orders it. But every mind is not your enemy. Only the moment you get angry. Only the moment you get angry. When anger arises in the mind, then the mind gets disturbed and is corrupted at that moment. So the real enemy is anger, not the mind. How then to kill this enemy? If you beat him, you nurse his anger. If you show your kindness, then his anger is appeased. That is why Lord Buddha said, conquer anger by kindness. If one has trained one's mind along such lines, he said, to remain unmoved at whatever happens, anger is not a problem. But, I asked, isn't it the ego that gets disturbed? Yes, he said, it is the ego that both disturbs and gets disturbed. Every time we control ourselves, I asked, do we get one step closer to nirvana? Yes, he said, but if you go a little forward, but do not remain mindful, you may slip farther and farther away from nirvana. Lord Buddha gave the following instruction that every Buddhist monk should remember. Forbearing patience is the highest ascetic practice. Nirvana is the supreme goal, so the Buddhas teach. One who harms others is not a monk, nor is he a recluse who maltreats others. Don't insult, don't harm. Restrain according to the fundamental moral code. Be moderate in food, live in a secluded abode, develop concentration of mind. This is the advice of all Buddhas. Venerable Ananda Maitreya explained how we can understand develop, and deepen our consciousness. He said the first stage of consciousness within ourselves is impulsive consciousness. If our mental impulsions are strong enough, they become a karmic force within our lives. For example, suppose there is a river that is flowing without disturbance. Then a leaf falls into it. The water ripples, and its disturbance of ripples begins to rise up as small waves in return until they subside and return as a calm flow of water. But then a stone falls into the water. If it is a heavy one, then many waves arise and there is a great disturbance. But then after a few minutes, the river becomes calm again and flows smoothly. Similarly, Venerable Ananda Maitreya said, our thought stream flows and external objects enter our thought stream through our senses. The inner stream becomes disturbed. The inner thought stream turns towards those outer objects, and different types of impulsive thoughts begin to rise up, either good or bad, according to the occasion. That is the nature of our impulsive consciousness. Among those impulsions, some are good and some are bad, such as anger, jealousy, pride. But these good and bad qualities never arise together. Where there is a good quality, no bad quality has the opportunity to arise. He continued, if we try to keep our thought stream wholesome through mindfulness, by not allowing any negative thoughts to arise in our impulsive consciousness, then we create what is called kushala chitta, which means we are gathering millions and millions of good thoughts in this way. Buddha has divided our consciousness in 4 levels. Venerable Ananda Maitreya explained. First, there is a consciousness that arises due to sense objects and is depending on sensual desire. Sensual desire is dormant, sleeping within every individual. When sensual thoughts arise from this dormant desire, such a person may do some good deeds, give alms, teach others, but there is a desire to be reborn into a happier birth. This level is called kama vichara chit, wherein both good and bad thoughts reside. He went on, when you pay respect to some great persons, like Ramakrishna, Buddha, Christ, at that time, in a worshiping moment, good, wholesome, and meritorious thoughts arise. But even they belong to the lower grade of consciousness. Even though you feel your mind is pure at that moment, he said, something disagreeable may come and you suddenly become hot-tempered. Where does it come from? It was there in the dormant stage, a sleepy state where there is the potentiality for such thoughts to arise. He continued, at that lower level, we may understand that pleasures are impermanent, but still we are attached to them because we have not thoroughly realized the exact nature of the world. But there are some who have understood to some extent the vanity of sense pleasures, and they have tired of them. They become somewhat highly developed mentally, and they follow a course of self-development, a course of concentration. They take some ideal for their object of concentration, a holy personality, or the compassion of the Buddha, or some such ideal, and fix their mind on that. They develop a one-pointedness toward that goal, and this concentration develops. In the beginning, he said, there may be so many disturbances, and the mind may wander towards desires. But such aspirants gather their mindfulness and reassert their strength of mind to fix their mind on that same ideal. And our teachers tell us the same thing. in our meditation. Venerable Ananda Maitreya went on. So again and again, in this way, these aspirants try to practice concentration. Now here, Swami Brahmananda explained, just as the Ganges has its ebb and flow, so is there an ebb and flow in spiritual moods at the beginning. But later, as you continue, there will come an even flow of the mind towards the goal, towards God. Venerable Ananda Maitreya went on. After some practice, the aspirant gains control over the mind, so it does not leave the ideal. He said, just as you fix a nail to a piece of wood and then hit it, and it penetrates the wood, similarly, the mind becomes fixed on only that object of concentration. This is the jhanic stage. We would call it the jhanic stage. Samadhi begins here. Then your mind is not outgoing, it remains in the object, not in an unconscious trance, but fully conscious. Now here, it's important to remind ourselves again that the word samadhi in Yoga Vedanta means something a little different than in Buddhism. In Tantra, Yoga, and Vedanta, there are distinct time frames of one-pointed concentration that correspond to a specific level of union in Sanskrit terminology. As my teacher explained, dharana, for concentration, is 12 seconds. And when you are able to fix your mind on your chosen ideal uninterruptedly for 12 seconds, there is what is called the joy of concentration. That happens. Dhyana, or meditation, is 12 times 12 seconds, roughly 2 minutes and 24 seconds. There is a deeper joy then. We use the word meditation very loosely, but real meditation is hard to come by and is very specific. 12 times 2 minutes and 24 seconds is roughly a half an hour. To be precise, 28 minutes and 48 seconds. And 12 times that is Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the highest Samadhi. 5 hours, 45 minutes, 36 seconds, or roughly in that time frame. In Buddhism, in the jhanic level of concentration, concentration deepens little by little, and it detaches from the sensate things of the world, the sights, smells, sounds, and tastes of the world. Venerable Ananda Maitreya explained. Then you feel when you develop that concentration, the ideal becomes greater and greater until it assumes its exact form. Now here we see Venerable Ananda Maitreya's depth and spiritual breadth. He said, suppose you practice this kind of concentration through the photo of Sri Ramakrishna. Eventually you may feel his form is nothing but the embodiment of virtues like compassion and so on. So the form melts into the qualities that are emanating from that form, as our teachers would describe. He went on, when you fix your mind on such qualities as that, at last you don't see the photo at all. You feel only compassion, purity, or some such virtue. You are filled with the presence of Sri Ramakrishna. And with that presence, there is compassion, purity, and so on. Venerable Ananda Maitreya explained that purity appears as light. You see a very strong, bright light, so you fix your mind there. This is yoga. He continued, and at last the mind becomes absorbed in that infinite light. In this way, concentration develops. This is the process of savitarka, nirvitarka, savichara, nirvichara. What has transpired in the mind, we may ask? He said, there are no passions in your heart. There is no anger, no pride in the mind. The mind is pure to a great extent. So the mind has risen to a high level, he went on. This is called Rupa Vachara, form of development. In Pali, Rupa means material. He continued, after death, one is born into a certain realm in which you have a very fine or subtle material body. But with full mind, full of bliss, which is called the Brahma realm or Brahma Loka, and aspirants live billions and billions of years in that state. Only by the means and practice of concentration can you come to that state. But after the force that you have gathered so far for so long is exhausted, then again you return to this world, but as a very holy person. Venerable Ananda Maitreya continued. If you continue to live a holy life on earth, you regain the state of Rupa Vachara you have attained in your former life. Yogis who then practice Rupa Vachara attain great ecstasies, but they realize that that is not the final emancipation. Then they realize, what is this weakness? I still have attachment to the material existence. So they try to rid themselves of that subtle material state and remain only as pure mind, as pure spirit, without any type of material state. They practice a still higher kind of concentration. Mentally, they imagine a space, and they see that that mental space, Chittakacha, is not an ordinary space. It is a space that is theirs mentally, but not with one's physical eyes is this space seen. This is a very subtle realm here. He continued, one tries to fix his or her mind on this mental space, it will be the object of their mind. As the space is infinite, one feels that one's mind is also infinite. Infinite mind is fixed on infinite mental space, and one remains in that state full of bliss and peace. He went on, a person who comes to that state doesn't require any food or anything. The aspirant doesn't feel hungry or thirsty. The yogi has completely forgotten the body. It doesn't influence him at all. The mind that is developed to this level is called Akasha Ananda Chaitya. Now, here we find this extraordinary state exemplified in the life of the famous saint Papari Baba, whom Swami Vivekananda venerated, and from whom the Swami wished to learn Raja Yoga in order to strengthen his body. But in vision, Sri Ramakrishna disapproved of this studentship. But let us read from Swami Vivekananda's second volume, comprehensive biography by his Eastern and Western disciples. It reads, who was this Pavhari Baba? Determined to find reality, he was initiated into the mysteries of yoga and then journeyed to Varanasi, where he met a great sannyasi who lived in a cave in the high bank of the Ganga. Here he mastered the Advaita Vedanta system, after which he traveled for many years, studying and leading a life of great austerity. Finally, he came back to his old home, Ghazipur, where, emulating his teacher in Varanasi, he dug a hermitage in the ground on the riverside. For many hours a day, he remained in meditation, and the nights he spent on the other side of the river in ascetic and religious practices. His daily diet consisted of a handful of bitter neem leaves or of a few pods of red pepper. He held all work to be worshiping the Lord, and he would often give the food he had cooked after offering it to his chosen deity, to the poor, or to wandering monks, himself refusing to eat. So spare was his diet that he was called Hapari Baba, air-eating father. As days went on, he spent more and more time in his cave, often months on end, until people wondered how he lived or whether he was dead. After a time, however, the Baba would emerge. When not absorbed in meditation, he would receive visitors in a room above the entrance of his cave. He never gave a direct reply to questions, saying only, "What does the servant know?" Later, he would see no one. Finally, Venerable Ananda Maitreya described the culmination of the Buddhist path. The aspirant goes further until he or she reaches the level of nirvana, the highest level of attainment, and with it comes complete freedom from all suffering. In conclusion, we see in Venerable Ananda Maitreya's life an example and a wonderful breadth and depth. Not only recognizing and embracing the efficacy of Hinduism's Raja Yoga techniques, but also the Advaita Vedanta practice of Dridrisha Viveka, out of which arose and closely parallels the Buddhist sadhana of Vipassana. From the overlap of Buddhist practices with Hindu practices, we see how Buddhism grew out of the Hindu tradition, while developing and flourishing its own distinct philosophies and practices. We can also appreciate how only such a rare and advanced soul as Venerable Ananda Maitreya, who after the culmination of his own spiritual growth, had the spiritual capacity to experiment with other traditions within Hinduism and could experience and appreciate their depth while maintaining the discipline and integrity of his own path. Just before he left, he admitted to me, though I am of the Theravada Buddhist tradition, I have the Bodhisattva ideal. I would like to reincarnate for the good and for the welfare of humankind. So these great souls are vessels of knowledge and become living scriptures to those of us who have the blessed fortune of their holy company.